you've been in the news over the past couple of days because you and Tucker have been kind of going back and forth on Israel, who's right, and that kind of thing. And it's gotten a little personal on his end a couple of times, including in an interview he gave to Sagar Enjeti, in which Sagar mentioned you in particular and some of the skirmishes and the disagreements you guys have had on Israel. Here's what Tucker said.
There are people on the right who have spent the last 2 months every single day focused on a conflict in a foreign country as our own country becomes dangerously unstable on the brink of financial collapse, with tens of millions of people who shouldn't be here in the country. We don't know their identities or the purpose of their being here. Like stuff that's could destroy the country for real and make it impossible for my kids to live here. They've said nothing about that, and they're focused with laser intensity on foreign conflicts. So they don't care about the country at all. And that's kind of their prerogative, but I do, because I have no choice, because I'm from here, my family's been here hundreds of years, I plan to stay here. Like, I'm shocked by how little they care about the country, and including the person you mentioned. And I can't imagine how someone like that could get an audience of people who claim to care about America, because he doesn't, obviously, right?
Right.
Your reaction to that?
I mean, a bit of an astonishing statement there from Tucker. I would never doubt his love for the country, even though he and I disagree wildly about a number of topics. First of all, he attributes to me a bunch of things that simply are not true. If anybody has listened to my show, which has a few listeners, over the course of the last several months, you'll see that I talk about all the issues that he mentions there, including the border issue, all the time. If you watch my show, he actually attributes to me, I believe in that interview, the view that, for example, the United States has some sort of duty to import Palestinians from Gaza. I've overtly opposed that because it's ridiculous, silly, and would be awful for the United States of America. So he just attributes to me a bunch of views I don't hold and then proceeds to say that I don't care about the country. Yeah, obviously that's silly and that's untrue. I think it's part and parcel of something that Tucker has had a habit of doing recently, which is we disagree, therefore you don't care about the people that I care about. You don't care about the country. As for the notion, by the way, that his people have been here for hundreds of years, all four of my grandparents on both sides have been here since the early 1900s. So over a century, my family has been here on both sides of the aisle. I also have no intention of moving. So, I don't know what more there is to say about that other than it's an absurd accusation. It's unfortunate. I certainly don't feel that way about Tucker as much as I disagree with Tucker, as we said, on a wide variety of issues.
No, I don't either. He loves America and so do you. And I know you both very well. So it's unfortunate to see that the kind of skirmish, but to me, whatever, you guys will move past it. What's more interesting about the whole thing, Ben, is we are seeing a very fractured right. I mean, a very fractured right? You've got the America First crowd, you've got the neocons. I never really considered you a neocon. I mean, our friends over at Commentary, John Podhoretz, Noah Rothman, now he's at National Review, open neocons. That's not how I see you. How do you describe yourself, and how do you see like what's happening now within Republican, within conservative circles on like sort of this, it's not as strong as to call it a civil war, but there are real differences that are leading people like Tucker to say, if Trump were to choose Nikki Haley as his vice president, I would actively campaign against the ticket. There would be a complete meltdown on Team MAGA.
I mean, honestly, it would be fascinating to see if Tucker actually did that, if Trump did pick Nikki Haley, because that would be de facto campaigning, I would assume, in favor of Joe Biden by that same sort of logic, because presumably one of those two people is going to be president of the United States. But when it comes to, the fractures on the right, of course, there are a lot of fractures on the right. There have historically been a lot of fractures on the right, going all the way back to battles between William F. Buckley and Pat Buchanan. I mean, there's nothing new that's happening here on the right. It's just louder. And I think that's because there is no sort of guiding voice of ideology inside the conservative movement writ large or inside the Republican Party, because Donald Trump, who is the leader of the conservative movement or Republican Party until deposed, he doesn't have a thoroughgoing ideology, and he's open to a bunch of different perspectives, meaning sometimes he sounds a lot like Tucker on foreign policy, and sometimes he sounds a lot like me on foreign policy, and there's a lot of in between. When it comes to sort of the arguments about foreign policy, where I put myself is in sort of the in sort of the hawkish realist camp, meaning that there are a lot of conflicts in which the United States should not be involved, but a complete United States isolationist retreat from the world is going to make for a significantly more dangerous world. So, for example, I don't think the United States should go to war in Iran. I don't think the United States has an interest in war with Iran. I think what the United States does have an interest in, however, is, for example, destroying the Houthi ability to stop up the shipping in the Red Sea, the Suez Canal, and the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. I mean, those are areas where the United States has a very strong interest in the freedom of the seas, not just because 10% of all world oil goes through that particular area, but also because if you don't actually demonstrate that the United States, through our naval power, is willing to guarantee freedom of the seas, there's a pretty solid shot that China is going to blockade Taiwan and then bottle up the Taiwan Straits, which is going to block up world trade almost entirely and therefore lead to a massive economic recession, which does impact American citizens. I think that there's a view of foreign policy that basically things that happen far away don't affect Americans. I think that that's wrong. I think that we can have debates over which area particular foreign conflicts fall into. But I think there's a sort of black and white rhetoric that's very often used with regard to arguments in which views are misattributed and accusations are made about policies that people don't even actually hold. And that I find weird.
Negative dings on credit reports happen to all sorts of people from all socioeconomic backgrounds. Understanding the credit landscape can be extremely tough, and spending the time to dispute and repair these so-called dings can be a full-time job. Good luck to you if you already have one of those or kids or anything going on in your life. For starters, you have to deal with 3 separate credit bureaus, which is a massive headache and unpleasant. It's also a common misconception that people with poor credit scores are just those who don't pay their credit card bills. These actually can be very hardworking people who are negatively affected by divorce, identity theft, medical debt, student loans, or some such thing. And they just don't have the time or they're just too overwhelmed to fix it. But if you don't address negative credit items, they can haunt you for years to come. And when it counts the most, like getting a mortgage at a competitive rate. Well, the good news is that our sponsor, Lexington Law, wants to help. Go to lexingtonlaw.com and start today with a free consultation and review. Tell them Megyn sent you at lexingtonlaw.com. Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.